So I will be speaking. I'll try to be as fast as possible, and I will be speaking on growing forward, growing forward, growing forward. Growing forward is the key to going forward. And if you want to go forward, you need to grow forward. You know, many times people know they need to grow, but I think that sometimes people just have a hard time with getting themselves to grow, right? And then being able to measure whether or not there is a growth happening. Okay, so a few things for me have helped me in setting my life on the track and in, you know, getting to that place where I have found me moving from one place to another. I did share a post this morning on Facebook and on Instagram and on other social media handles, right? Where I talked about how that as a young man, I wanted to be very successful. I desired to be very successful. And I had this big dream, I had this big vision of my life, at least as much as I knew at the time. And I really intended to actualize it, to experience those dreams and visions that I had. I wanted to experience them in their full measure, And so looking back, I see that quite a number of things helped me. You know, I wanted to speak around the world. I wanted to go everywhere. I wanted to be highly sought for. I wanted to command a lot of relevance, have influence. While, yes, I am still in the process of growing these things, but I indeed have experienced quite some success in my life. I have experienced quite a bit of going forward that is significant, right? And many of the things that I desired at that time to see, many of the things are no longer dreams because they've been actualized, they've been realized. I wanted to speak around the world. To date, I've spoken on 4 continents. I've spoken on so many audiences. I've spoken to so many audiences, you know, around the world. And it's just amazing how great the demand is. As a matter of fact, a time came when I literally just started desiring, oh God, like open doors for me locally as well, because I seemed to be traveling more internationally, as it were, or speaking in audiences. It seemed to be easier to be in audiences internationally than in even some of the major cities in Nigeria at the time. Of course, I still lived in Nigeria at the time. So how did I do it? Because you must know what has brought you success in order to sustain it. You must know the things that you have done to take you to the place that you are, especially if it's a desirable place, so that you can solidify, you can build capacity on them and move on even to the next level. Like I said, many things that I wanted as a young man, many things I wanted to see, I wanted to do, I've done them. Now I'm setting new goals, I'm dreaming new dreams and expanding on my vision and doing bigger things because God has helped me to achieve many of the things that I once dreamt about. Okay, so number one thing that helped me was going for principles, searching for principles. Principles govern experience, desirable experience. Principles govern desirable experience. Every desirable experience, for example, success, is governed by principles, right? If you can find the principles that have created a certain genre of success, then you are in that place where you might be able to reproduce that success. How do you even reproduce it? First of all, you gather the principles, you understand them, you understand their application, and you study over time to apply them to where you can now reproduce the same success that you had seen that drew your attention, right? So go for principles. Principles come from wisdom. You need wisdom. You can't have a life that is devoid of wisdom. You need wisdom. You have to search for it. Let me tell you the truth. Wisdom doesn't come easy. Wisdom doesn't come easy. You need wisdom. You have to search for wisdom. Wisdom comes from a consistency of fellowship with counsel, a consistency of fellowship, with relevant information. You must look for relevant information. You want people to look for you. Look for relevant information. You want people to seek for you. Seek for wisdom. The Bible says of wisdom in Proverbs 4, from verse 7 to 9, it says, wisdom is the principal thing. Therefore get wisdom. And with all thy getting, get understanding. He says, exalt her, and she shall promote thee. She shall bring thee to honor when thou dost embrace her. An ornament of grace shall she give to thine head. So honor is tied to the acquisition of wisdom. You must search for it. This wisdom doesn't come cheap. This wisdom really doesn't come easy. You have to be determined that you want to be successful. You have to be determined that you want to climb, you want to rise. For me, I wanted phenomenal success. I literally wanted a life where I will hop between continents, hop between nations, and that is the life that I have lived many years. In November, by the way, I will be on 3 continents. Speaking, just hopping from one to another. I'll be in 4 nations on 3 continents. How do you grow to become someone who is highly sought for, someone who is resourceful? You must gather the resources if you're going to be resourceful. To be resourceful means to be full of resources. And these resources come from relevant information. I tell you the truth, if you're willing to pay the price, if you start learning today, if you start giving yourself and pouring yourself into the wisdom of God, nations will look for you. People will look for you. That's how it works. Go for principles. Number 2 thing that helped me was learning to pursue excellence, quality, and excellence. Pursuing quality and excellence. You have to be a person of quality. It is said that excellence will suffer no discrimination, meaning that when you're excellent, literally any kind of door can open for you, right? But how do you become a person of excellence? If you're going to be a person of excellence, you have to have standards. If you're going to be a person of excellence, it means you should be, to an extent, predictable. Predictable for good, in the sense that someone knows that you're not going to drop below this quality. You know why? Because you have standards and you have mastered them. You have standards and you have mastered them. What are your standards in your craft, in your life? Let's start from your life. Does your life have standards? You need to have standards in your life. What are the standards that govern your life? And I have learned that if you're going to become anything worth the while, if you're going to become anyone worth hearing, there must be certain standards by which you live your life. Someone should know that when they find you, when you show up, you cannot fall beneath a certain threshold, right? Because you've set your standards high. Concerning Daniel, in Daniel chapter 5, if you read all the way from verse 11 to, I think, 12 or 13, the queen was talking about Daniel, and she began to read out his resume and talked about how much light, how much wisdom, how much understanding, how he had the ability to dissolve doubts and to, unpack hard sentences. And she went on to say, let Daniel now be called, and he shall show the interpretation of the matter. She boasted about this man because he had a track record of certain standards in his life. Do you have standards in your life? You can't be a person of excellence if you're not a person of quality. Pursue quality. You can't be a quick fix type of person. You can't be a just do it anyhow kind of person. You must be someone who is interested in doing it very well. By the way, excellence also entails details. People of excellence are detailed. They are detailed. From your products, the things that you do, is there detail? In your finishings, is there detail? You sew clothes, is there detail to it? Can someone look at this piece of clothing very carefully and just observe the details that you have put in finishing it? You know, in the things you sell, in the things you make, in your job, is there any detail? Are you mindful of details? So somebody also said recently, he said, excellence is the ability to exceed expectations. Wow, that is powerful. He said excellence is the ability to exceed expectations. So every time people meet with you, every time people drink from your hand, so to say, you exceed their expectations. Be a person of excellence, and you must go the extra mile. Excellence requires the extra mile. You have to go the extra mile to making sure that you are on top of your craft, you're on top of your game, and you are bringing on your A game at all times. May I add that people of excellence do not have excuses. They don't have excuses. I realize that people who always have excuses for falling short, always have excuses for not performing great, always have excuses, people who always have excuses for why they can't live up to expectations, why they can't do the job as at when due, why, they just can't deliver, why, they give you all the reasons. These are average people. You can easily find an average from the kinds of excuses that people give. You can easily identify an average mentality, an average mindset from the kinds of excuses that people give. Be a person of excellence. Another thing, just before I close that up, I did mention in my post today that one of the things I did when I was practicing to speak around the world was to speak locally just like I would speak globally, right? I used my local platforms as my rehearsal place, as my launch pad, as my rehearsal ground for my global dream, right? So when I spoke to people locally, I actually did it like I was on a platform in London, I was somewhere in New York, I was somewhere in one of those cities out there, right? So I made sure my communication was intact. I made sure I trained myself to communicate like someone that people in another nation and people in highly civilized places and highly industrialized places will love to listen to. Very important. I also made sure it reflected in my dressing, in my personality, in my mode of living and the way I did things. Very important. So act locally with global standards. Act locally with global standards. Then of course books. Now, so books help to expose you to a wide wavelength of relevant information. I have read hundreds of books to date, and I can tell you that one of the biggest keys that have unlocked the success that I enjoy today is reading of books. Books will stretch your mind and impart your heart in a manner that is difficult to recover from. Every time you sit with a book, you sit with a mind. Every time you sit with a book, you sit with a mind. One of the easiest ways to fellowship with great minds is to sit with their books. You see, books accord you the opportunity to think. They allow you process. They allow you sit in. Books are powerful. Books will totally change your life. They will totally change your life. For people who say, I find it difficult to read. Every time I pick up a book, I can't finish it. I can read beyond the page. And look, you've not desired success enough. You have not desired success enough. There is too much that you need to learn. There's too much that you need to learn. The globe is running at such a pace that you cannot afford to be the one who has excuses for not getting on the information that helps you compete favorably with others. You need to sit with great minds. As I study very wealthy people and highly successful people, I realized that they are readers. They're usually mostly readers, and they want to be abreast of emerging ideas, emerging philosophies, and information relevant to their endeavors. You cannot afford to be ignorant. You can't afford to be ignorant. You have to read books. Listen, people, there is a price for greatness. There is a big price for greatness. If you're not ready to pay the price, then of course you're not ready to get the prize. If you're not ready to pay the price, then you can get the prize. If you're going to get the prize, then you must pay the price. You must pay the price. Read books, proper books in different areas of life. Read books from people who have excelled in their vocations, in their fields, people who have excelled in areas where you want to function and excel. Read books that others are not willing to read. And I bet you, I also posted recently that you will be paid for every single book you read today. You will be paid tomorrow for every single book that you read today. I am being paid today for the books I read yesterday, and all of those hundreds of books that I've loaded into my system have made it difficult for me to think average. They've made it difficult for me to think like my locality. And it doesn't matter what my locality is. When I'm in New York, I'm also thinking differently. When I'm in Nigeria, I'm thinking differently. When I'm in other parts of the world, I think in some way. I think in some way that can give me an advantage. Books will make it difficult for you to think normal thoughts. Books will make it very difficult for you to think ordinary thoughts. When you read books and your mind is expanded, you begin to access concepts at such a wavelength that is transformational. I tell you the truth, books will change your life. Books will change your life. The other thing that has also helped me is I have learned to keep valuable relationships. Keep valuable relationships. Look, relating is an art. Relating is not just getting to know people, getting to connect to people. People stay at the level of just connecting with people, and many times they can't keep the connections. Many times they can't keep the connections. Truly, sometimes you open doors to people to relate with you, and those relationships cannot be sustained for many reasons. And sometimes I try to explain to people the fact that you know someone who is well positioned, who occupies a privileged place of function, does not mean you will always have access to the person. There are things you must do if you're going to keep relationships. Some people have not learnt it, right? They have not learnt it. They haven't learnt it. There are protocols for keeping relationships. There are protocols, and you must recognize these protocols. For example, know the difference between a right and a privilege. It seems to me that sometimes once someone gains access to someone, they are quick to forget, especially when it's someone on a higher pedestal than they are. They are quick to forget that, hey, it's a privilege. Let me tell you the truth. Access is a privilege. Access is a privilege. And you see something about privileged access, it can be lost at any time. It can be lost at any time. Access is a privilege, and always treat it like a privilege. And it's also interesting that when you know that you have received something by privilege, and you demonstrate that I realize that this is a privilege, you're very likely to manage it properly, sometimes people start, on a nice note, and then they lose themselves in the process, because you see, relationships, as we keep relating with certain people, there's a tendency that it gets less formal, and you might think that, oh yeah, that's the place where you can now do anything anyhow. I believe that when a relationship gets less formal, that's when you should be more sensitive. That's when you should be more sensitive, because you don't know at what point someone begins to feel taken for granted. You don't know at what point you no longer have a check on your tongue and you're just talking carelessly. You don't know at what point you begin to trivialize something that was given to you on a platter. You don't know at what point the doors close. And sometimes when you relate closely with certain kinds of people, and it looks like suddenly that no longer relating in that manner, you have to go and search yourself, because something has happened. Something has happened. Learn how to keep relationships. If a relationship is important to you, demonstrate it. If a relationship is valuable, honor it. There is no way you honor people who have given you access by privilege that you don't keep the access for a long time. So honor creates an atmosphere for longevity in relationships. Honor creates an atmosphere for longevity, right? So if it's going to last long, if it's going to be there, then you have to demonstrate that you respect this gift that you've been given, and you recognize that it's a privilege, and you do not want to lose it. You do not want to lose it. There are many protocols that govern relationships, especially when you're relating, when you're trying to punch above your weight, right? When you're trying to connect with people who have gone ahead of you. You need wisdom. You need wisdom. You need wisdom. Okay, I could say much more about that, but I'm just going to leave that there. And then for the friends that you have, it is wisdom to recognize value in people. Who is valuable and who's not. There are people who just put everyone on the same line. They just put everyone in the same place. It is wisdom to discern difference. Everybody does not play the same role in your life. Everybody does not play the same role in your life. There are people who should be in a certain place of preference and prominence in your life because of the role that they play, right? And you see that relationships never leave us the same. Whether they are good relationships or bad, they have a way of influencing our lives. In Proverbs chapter 13 verse 20, the Bible says, he that walks with the wise shall be wise, but a companion of fools shall be destroyed. So you have to be able to decipher, you have to be able to discern relationships that are valuable in your life, and know how to put them in a place of preference, in a place of prominence, so that you can benefit maximally from the influence that they pour into your life. Know how to keep relationships. People provide us the opportunities to be successful, no matter how much you know, no matter who you are, no matter how loaded you are. If nobody ever gives you an opportunity to showcase what you have, you're going to die unknown. You're going to die a non-entity, okay? A non-entity, all right? So it is people that give opportunities. Every man you meet is a potential platform. Every man you meet is a door of a unique experience. And so when you can do an assessment of the type of man you have met, you can also predict the kind of experience you're very likely to come into. And you see, there's a scripture that says, he that had a friend, is a scripture in Proverbs, must show himself friendly. Is that Proverbs 18:24? He that had a friend must show himself. Please, can you check that for me? Proverbs 18:24, I think. Check that real quick. He that had a friend must show himself friendly, meaning you have a responsibility to keep relationships. You can't be the one who's being called all the time. by your friends, right? So Proverbs 18:24. Yeah. So you have to show yourself friendly. There are things that you should do if you're going to keep your relationships, if you're going to nurture. Relationships are nurtured. They don't just happen. You don't call friends only when you have a challenge, when you have an issue, when you have a need, when you have that. No. Friendship can become burdensome when there is no reciprocity. Friendship becomes burdensome when there is no reciprocity. There's got to be reciprocity. You have to show yourself a friend, which means you're going to make sacrifices for friends. It means you're going to bend over for friends. It means you're going to suffer some inconvenience for friends. But that's what friendship is about. It means you're going to show up for friends. You're going to have to be in places. You're going to have to, go the extra mile just to nurture and water certain friendships. Okay, so you need to learn to keep valuable relationships. And you see that if you're able to maintain your relationships, more likely than not, you will multiply your opportunities. When you maintain relationships, you multiply your opportunities, because doors keep opening through doors, right? Doors keep opening through doors. You have to know how to keep these relationships. Lastly, you have to keep growing and evolving. You have to keep growing and evolving. I have kept growing and evolving. There are higher versions of you. There are higher versions of you. There are more powerful versions of you. But you must keep growing. You cannot reveal a new version of you if you're not growing. Growing must be intentional. You can't assume you're growing. The passage of time does not guarantee growth. Just the fact that you have moved from age 35, you're now 40, does not mean you have grown. You've added age, but you've not grown. You have grown when you have intentionally invested resources that are on a higher level in your life, and that investment is beginning to reflect in your behavior, in your mental processes, in the quality of your actions, and in the results that you're seeing. So you can't just assume that you have grown. You have grown when you have moved from a point A to a point B. You used to be at a point A in a certain way, and now you have moved to a point B. You have grown when it's easier for you to process certain things, when it's easier for you to develop certain things. You have grown when the solutions that you used to have are now of higher quality, right? And they can solve problems more easily. You have grown when you can more easily synthesize information and use this information to sort out issues. There are things to check to know whether you have grown. And very importantly, I mentioned behavior. You have grown when your behavior changes, right? It is said in education that learning has happened when there is a relative permanent change, or a relatively permanent change in behavior. So your thinking is different now. You see life differently. Your worldview is altered, and you are more on top of things that would usually, or prior to this time, wear you down, or you have built capacity to do certain things easily. What would take a long time to do now, you can do with a snap of a finger. You have grown. So growth can be measured. There should be improvement in whether it's your attitude, your character, your behavior, your results, the quality of your actions, your choices, your decisions. These are the things that show that you have grown. And as you grow, you keep evolving. You keep evolving. As you evolve, there are unique flares and blends of you that are made available and that show up in your craft. Things are different, and somehow you are a more preferred version of your originality, right? When you grow and evolve, you become a more preferred version of your originality. I hope this helps you, and I look forward to connecting with you again.